Um, right. Well, welcome back.
Oh my God, we're recording.
We are.
Welcome back.
So we are here in episode 2 of our half marathon bootcamp.
We are.
We've already been chatting off pod about what we want to talk about because it is so interesting, and I love this because we're quite new to this. So you're learning with us, but we're new to this in that is this particular thing that we're talking about today, which is the different kinds of running that you might see on a training plan. These sorts of different kinds of running things, as I think we alluded to in our last episode, is quite a recent thing for us. We're not elite athletes, obviously. We're very much amateur, and understanding training plans has been quite. Even though I'm the editor of Women's Running, I've let other people do all that explaining before, and so it's quite new for me to look on a training plan, see a run that looks difficult, challenging, I don't know, just different. And this, in the last kind of 3 years, it's the first time that I've really been doing them. And before we trained, both me and you were running the London Marathon this year. And when we were training for that, I did have to confess to the running coach, Jordan, who we were working with at the time, that I'd been putting off starting my interval trainings. And she sort of went, why? Why are you putting it off? Because she knows why we should do it, right? So, well, before we get into why, should we talk about what?
Yeah, should we break down the types of runs? And again, I think just to reassure all of you, because you know that we're new to this, and I was about to say we're idiots. That's not fair, and I'm not going to say that about us on this podcast. But yeah, I feel like I would be a fraud to pretend that this is information that we know off the top of our heads. Yeah. I have done some research, and our lovely friends from across the web, including at the Running Channel, have given me a lovely, clear sort of breakdown of all the types of runs that you might see on a plan explained. And I'm just going to also caveat this by saying that we've sort of talked about this a little bit before in an episode we did in our Start to Run series. But this is a bit more detailed and might sound a bit overwhelming or intimidating. You're probably not going to have all types of these runs on your half marathon plan, but they might crop up, and it's useful to know what they all are, I think, just so that they don't feel intimidating, so that they feel like normal and fine.
Yeah, and I do think that if you don't understand your training plan, it's worth having a little route around the internet a bit further to find one that matches in terms of distance, but explains the different kinds of runs in a little easier kind of way. Actually, I have to say that Women's Running, in the magazine and on the website, we now include a lot of training plans that are far easier to navigate than old training plans. Like older training plans would explain things by saying stuff like warm up for 10 minutes, 5 minutes at half marathon pace, 2 minutes at, or 1 kilometer at 10k pace, and all these things which, when you're starting running, sounds like a foreign language. You're like, but my half marathon pace is my 10k pace, or my 10k pace is my 5k pace. What are the differences in this? Newer training plans aren't quite so mystifying. I think people have started to explain training plans in much more layman's terms, and that's what we plan to do as well.
Yes, agreed. And I think also they now explain more, like whether you're using a training plan or if you're using an app, or you've got a PT or a coach. I think that people have a bit more of a drive to want to know why and what. What's the purpose and why are you doing that type of run? And that's really helped me. For a long time, I feel like, and we've talked about this openly on the podcast, that there would be like a sort of aim to try and beat the plan. So you'd be like, right, I'm going to run a bit longer, or I'm going to try and run faster. And actually understanding what that type of run is for and why I'm doing it has helped me go, no, I shouldn't be trying to run this faster, actually, because the whole point of this is that I'm supposed to be, in sort of lower levels of my effort so that I'm gently increasing my cardio fitness, or that kind of thing has been really helpful to understand a bit more of, so I know
Mhm.
when I need to push and when I need to not.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about the different kinds
Mm,
of runs that classically you might see on a training plan and why you should be doing them. And is it all right if I ask you about the first one? Because I want to ask about the
mm.
first particular one, which especially if you're moving from either a 5K or a 10K up to a half marathon, especially if you're doing that,
Yeah.
one of the most important runs, if not the most important run that you'll see at the end of the week, probably, is the long run. So, like, what is that and why should we do it?
Yeah, so I think you are right. I think the long run is generally considered by coaches and stuff to be the most important one.
Hmm.
If we're talking about half marathon, I think the average for your longest long run would be between like 11 and 16 miles. That sounds quite scary to me personally,
Hmm.
because I have done half marathons having only done 10, and I think that will all depend obviously on whether you've done them before, what your goals are. Like sometimes your plan might suggest that you run longer than the actual distance if you're trying to run it in a really fast time or something, but in general that's the thing we were talking about last week, of working up gradually, tacking on. I think generally the advice is like 10%, isn't it, every time, to what
Hmm.
you've kind of done before to build that endurance. So yeah, all about endurance, psychological training as
Yeah.
well, I think. Like that's one of the things that I find really important with those runs is I used to be terrified of doing like a 10-mile run, for example, and I
Hmm.
don't know when that changed or when that kind of flipped, but something has happened that I don't feel that way anymore, and it's just doing it more. It's
Yeah.
practicing doing those long miles. You just don't feel quite so intimidated by them. You start to realize that like that the voice that's telling you to stop running, it gets a bit quieter because you've tricked it into going, no, I can definitely do this. Shut up.
Yeah.
And so yeah, psychological training as well, I would say, for the big day when you're going to be running a really long distance.
Yeah.
And um I think basically effort wise, that
Yeah.
can actually kind of change for long runs. I don't think that is necessarily set in stone, but the idea is that it shouldn't necessarily be like your highest level of kind of perceived effort there for your long run. Like what you're trying to focus on is the endurance over a long period of time rather than absolutely gunning it. Save that for other sessions. But yeah, sometimes like some of my plans ask me to run it at my very easiest pace. Sometimes it will push me a bit more and get me to do chunks that are a bit quicker. Um, I guess the only other thing that it's worth mentioning about long runs as well is that those are the real time to start also trialing your gels and hydration strategy,
Hmm.
practicing in the shoes that you want to wear, the kit that you want to wear, because those are kind of your dress rehearsal runs a bit, aren't they?
Yeah, they definitely are. That's a really, really good point. And I think it's kind of I think it's worth mentioning too that if you've not trained for a half marathon before, if this is your very, very first half marathon and you've got your training plan in front of you, whether that's kind of online or a piece of paper or whatever, um, and if you scroll to the last few weeks and you start looking at those distances, not only can they be off-putting just in terms of distance, they can be really off-putting in terms of time. Like you can start thinking to yourself, well, where am I going to find 2 hours to do this? And, because it seems so long. Um, but I think it's worth trying to do more of a top down approach to the plan, and have a look at those long runs just on a kind of with a wider lens. Because actually, if you do that, you'll probably discover that you're only going to be running those very long distances, the sort of 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, those sorts of big long distances, with some kind of 12 and 16-week plans, you might only do 4 runs above 8 miles, say.
Yeah.
And it's worth remembering that it doesn't have to take over your life. Like half marathon training can be actually very achievable in terms of fitting it into your schedule. Lots of plans are available where you're just running 3 times a week, and
Yeah.
2 of those runs will be underneath an hour, and
Yeah.
1 run at the weekend might will inevitably tip over an hour, at some point, but it's not every single weekend. So
No, that's true.
for the 12, 16 weeks that you're training it, every single weekend, you are not going to be running for 2.5, 3 hours. That's only
Yeah.
going to be in the last sort of month of your training before you taper. So,
Yeah.
don't be worried about the time
Yeah,
initially.
it's also worth saying that particularly if you're a slower runner, like, when I first started training for halves, and actually until very, very recently,
Mm,
all the plans that I've done have focused on how long that long run should be rather than how many miles. So
mm.
don't get bogged down in mileage. For example, I just fell into the trap there of telling you what the average mileage was. Who cares, really?
Yeah.
The answer is, like, time on your feet, essentially, because that's what you're building. It's that endurance, um and if there will come a sort of bit of a tipping point, I think, that obviously a coach or a plan or however you're following your training will be able to tell you more exactly,
Mhm.
where you want to make sure that you're preserving your energy and you're looking after yourself and you're not running yourself into the ground. Because if it's going to take you 2.5, 3.5 hours to do a half marathon,
Mhm.
your plan is not going to be asking you to do those kinds of lengths of long run every weekend leading up to race day, because that's going to exhaust you. So,
Yeah.
yeah, time on your feet and building that up slowly is the key.
Yeah. And it's also, I mean, we'll get into this in some later episodes, but bear in when you've done that, and if you've got the means to do so, you've been recording your run, perhaps you've been recording some other metrics as well. It's worth bearing in mind what the rest of your body is doing when you've been doing those runs, because after you've finished 2.5, 3 hours worth of running, your heart rate will have gone up, your stress levels would have gone up, everything would have gone up. Um, so then you need to rest and recover.
Yeah.
And the rest and recovery is incredibly important. We will get into this at another stage, but no matter how easy you take that run, it's a long effort. So looking after yourself by getting some food in as soon as you possibly can, making sure that you're well hydrated, and making sure you get a good night's sleep before and afterwards, ideally,
Yeah.
is a really, really good way of kind of putting a nice kind of fence around your recovery and making sure that you build up stronger for the next run that you do. And the next run that you might do on your plan, say we're thinking about a plan starting on a Sunday, and that's the big long one on a Sunday
Yeah.
morning. The next one that you might do a couple of days later might be an easy run, right?
It might be an easy run. It might even be a recovery run. And I think we can probably talk about those two in the same breath. So
Hmm.
sometimes it might be called a recovery run. That's probably more likely, I suppose, to be after you've done a big race or you've done a really big effort where you know that you need to that's mainly focused on a shorter distance where you're thinking about muscle recovery and just trying to get your body back to its normal state after you've done something quite intense.
Hmm.
But an easy run, which is going to be throughout your plan, is the kind of run where you're everybody always says running at conversational pace, don't they? Which I do think particularly when you're a beginner, is like, oh, bloody hell.
Yeah.
It took me ages to be able to chat while running.
Yeah.
It's easier said than done. So I
It
guess it's
is.
more at what you perceive to be a lower rate of sort of perceived effort.
Hmm.
So towards the bottom end of all of the sessions that you're doing in a week, this is the one that should feel the most comfortable in terms of your heart rate and how much you're pushing. And normally it's not too long.
Yeah.
Um, and that is where they are actually really, really important. I think they're always the ones that in a week I think, oh, I'll skive that one if I'm going to skive one. But actually, easy runs, I think, are vital for building your speed and endurance bit by bit, because the
Hmm.
longer time, and this is going to sound really annoying and running influencery, but I think the whole idea is that you should be in heart rate zone 2 for those runs. And I believe the longer time that you're spending running in that zone,
Yeah.
the more work you're doing to build your overall fitness, and you're going to find it much easier then to push your kind of threshold.
Yes, and but I think you're really right on picking up on that whole kind of conversational pace thing. It's it is so easy to say, and yet actually not when you're running. I think that it's worth bearing in mind, particularly if this is your first half marathon and you've just started running, that don't get disheartened by things like that, or when people, or even by the term easy run,
Yeah.
because like every single run is bloody hard, right? It's all hard. It's just comparative. That's all. So
Mm,
comparatively, and comparative to yourself, not to anyone on Instagram, comparatively, that run on the Tuesday, say, after you've done a long run on the Sunday, that run should feel a bit easier than the one that you did on Sunday. It should feel the easiest of the lot, as you just said. It just less hard, maybe. It should they should
less
we should put
hard
it
run.
that.
Less
Yeah.
hard run. Yes. Yeah.
Which then I've left a lot more time to talk about all of the rest of them, because all of the
Yeah.
rest of them are complicated conkers.
All of the rest of them are complicated conkers. And I guess these are the sort of runs that you will have as like your third run in the week.
Mhm.
Maybe if you are running more times a week, then you might have multiple of them in there. But
Yeah.
I aim for one of these a week. And I will say that one a week has made a big difference to my running in the last year.
Mhm.
But let's talk about us us both and our opinions at the end. Back to the facts.
Yes.
So we're talking about things like interval runs here, and
Mhm.
interval runs actually, I guess, sort of cover quite a lot of these. But that's when you're going to be working on your speed and increasing your VO2 max, a term that we sort of try to avoid using on this podcast because I don't feel like we understand it.
We don't.
We
No.
don't, but that is, I think, and everyone's going to hate me if I don't get it right, how efficiently your body is using the oxygen that you're taking in to do things.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, it's a bit
Something like
like
that.
that. We've
Yeah.
had multiple people come on the podcast to explain this to us, and I still feel like I don't really understand how it's calculated or exactly what it means. But it's the sort of buzzwordy way, I guess, of measuring like your overall cardio fitness. Would you
Yes.
say?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's that. And it's something definitely not to get bogged down in if it's
No.
not something you want to get into. And we know that like lots of us when we start using fitness trackers and watches and whatever can get really bogged down in stats, and it can actually be disheartening, not uplifting. So
Really disheartening. That's how
mm,
I feel, and I still don't run with a watch for these very reasons. I just don't care about what my VO2 max is. I
mhm.
like to know what I can actually perceive, and I will say that doing these types of runs has given me a massive perceptible increase in how long I can sustain fast speeds,
Yes.
I guess.
Yeah, they're they're really weird and they're really clever. But the whole concept of interval running is intervals, right? So
Mm,
bits of running that are different from other bits of running. So whether that is running up a hill and coming back down it again, or going faster or going slower, or maintaining a pace for a while and then dropping down for a
mm,
while. These are intervals of time at which your running is different. And I used to avoid these like the plague. And the reason I used to avoid them is that perception of myself as being a slow runner, um, and someone that was only able to maintain a singular pace.
yeah.
Didn't think I could run faster. Turns out we can all run faster. Um,
We just have to do the boring bit of doing
yeah,
like 1 minute sprinting, a minute walking, 1 minute sprinting, a minute walking.
yeah,
It is, well, I will say it is dull, but it's also kind of, sometimes I look forward to those sessions more than like my long runs, for example,
yeah.
because they're broken up nicely.
Yes, you get through them really
They
quickly.
go fast. They really
Yeah,
do.
yeah, they go really fast. And I'm not going to lie, they do hurt. So when it's an interval session, you're talking about putting a lot more effort in to the bits of running where you're either going up a hill or running a bit faster, lots more effort than the easy run or the long
Yeah.
run. It makes you weirdly long for the long run,
Yeah,
because
it
you're like,
kinda does.
it really, really, really hurts in a way in which the long run doesn't. Because the long run just incrementally just creeps up on you, doesn't it? But this hurts almost from the get-go. So
Mm.
that it does, but you feel incredible afterwards. And if you're a
Yeah.
slow runner like me and you suddenly find yourself doing a session that calls for 10 minutes of sprinting on and off, so a
Mm.
minute sprint, a minute walk, like you just said, by the end of that, and by the end of a 10-minute cool down session, I begin to sort of imagine I'm kind of, I don't know, Paula Radcliffe? I mean,
Yes.
not far off, definitely feel quite superhuman at the end of it, in a way in which
Oh,
I
me
don't with the long
too.
run. So,
No, and I don't with tempo run. Well, maybe I do a bit with tempo runs, but we'll come on to those
mm,
next. But interval is where I quite like to see what I'm made of, because you really can just go balls to the wall. And even though it does often leave me feeling quite sick
mhm.
afterwards, I do feel quite impressed when I look and I'm like, okay, because
Mm,
you should find and you will find that the pace that you can do for a minute is very different to the pace that you can do for an hour, and if you're really, really pushing. So um I think when I first started to notice that, it was like, "Oh, look at me go. I'm just honestly the fastest person in the world. The Olympic team is calling."
oh,
And
yeah.
it is nice. But that is really like top end of your, if we're using again this kind of scale of like effort, if you were
Mhm,
to kind of rank them, then your easy runs somewhere at the bottom, your long runs a little bit higher than that, your tempo runs kind of at the top end of your scale. I would say slightly lower in terms of like the actual efforts when you're doing them would
mm,
be tempo runs, but
yep,
that's going to be for longer periods of time. So either tempo runs are like for a 15-minute run, 20-minute run or something where you're pushing a bit quicker for that whole period of time,
mhm.
or it might be split into intervals like 8 or 10 minutes of going a bit quicker with a little recovery period. They're kind of longer in my experience of doing tempo runs.
Yes, same here. So I
Mm.
I had to do one earlier on this week, and it was exactly that. It was 10 minutes on, 10 minutes off. And I
Mm.
was lucky enough to be running on a treadmill in a gym at the time, which meant I could easily kind of monitor the pace and stuff. But if you do have access to a watch, it really, really helps, or something that can kind of monitor how fast you're going, just so you can kind of evaluate really how fast you're running those distances. So I do strongly recommend picking something up that can kind of judge that distance and time for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I think I have definitely noticed the difference when I do those sorts of runs in terms of my overall performance in longer races.
That's the
Um,
key thing, isn't it? Is
yeah.
that like interval training is great for just bringing down your pace in general, or bringing up your pace, you know what I mean? Making you quicker in general. But I would say tempo runs are really important if you're looking at doing a half marathon in particular,
Mhm.
because running, especially if you're going for a time goal, running fast is one thing. Trying to run quickly for a long period of time can be a bit savage. So they're really good because you see those kind of times like 8, 10, 12-minute splits of running quite quickly
Yeah.
on a training plan and think, oh, marvelous, I'm going to be sick down my front.
Yeah.
But actually, they are what's going to stop you being sick down your front on the day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's all
Quickly,
very
they do become manageable.
they do. They
Mm.
absolutely do. Are there any other types of runs in this sort of clump of interval training that we're
Yeah, I guess the other one that I'm not quite sure I fully know the difference between, but I will try my very best to sound authoritative on the matter, is a
Mhm.
threshold run. Um,
Oh, yeah, okay.
so I thought that a threshold run was like the top end of pushing your, so that would be higher than the interval run. But this
Mm.
little description here to me sounds like that would more be like similar to a tempo run,
Yeah, I
where
think so, yeah.
yeah, where it's about trying to run just below your lactate threshold.
Ah, God knows what that is.
I don't quite
Yeah.
get that either. There's something to do with the lactic acid. Let's go with that.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that will. be like, they'll be generally a little bit shorter. They will be kind of threshold repeats where you're doing like 10 times 1 kilometer of this, or, that kind of thing.
Mhm, mhm.
Um, I mean, probably quite similar to intervals. It's just that you might be pushing a little bit less hard on a threshold run.
Yeah, and not dropping down intermediately to kind of walk or to run much slower. I
Yeah.
do I
And
mean,
I think they are a bit quicker in terms of the actual, like, how long the run takes. I think the idea of a
yes.
threshold run is it's a bit more of a short, sharp,
Yeah.
rather than, I had to really stop myself from saying short, shart then, um, than like a tempo run or an interval run, which can in a half marathon plan, like the one I'm doing at the moment, my interval runs are like an hour sometimes.
Oh god.
I know, it's
Yeah.
quite mean. So, yeah, your threshold runs are gonna be shorter.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
Um, Also, I mean, I know that we sound as if we know what we're talking about when we clearly don't. But just to make anyone feel happy out there that we're all in this together. I I have a Garmin. I have a Cooper training plan. I have all sorts of lovely things that are helping me do these things. I still don't know what I'm doing.
No.
I still come back, and even though Cooper has sent me out on an easy run or a threshold run or a tempo run, and I've done exactly what I've been told, I will come back and I will press stop on my Garmin, and my Garmin will say that I've done something completely different. So
See, Garmin doesn't even know what it really means.
he doesn't have a clue, doesn't have a clue.
No.
So
So there we go. All with a bit of a pinch of salt. I mean, I think all of these can slightly be taken as like, yeah, again, like I'm following a lovely Cooper plan that I feel has been beautifully designed for me, is exactly what I need to be doing to reach my goal. And similarly, I don't really understand the difference between when it's telling me to do an interval, or I do know, however, this one, a
yes.
fartlek.
Oh, I know that one.
So a fartlek is also a type of interval run, like you're doing intervals within that run, but I think is it come from a Swedish word
It does.
meaning speed play?
Yes.
And I think it means that it kind of ends up being somewhere between like a tempo workout and an
Mm.
easy run. So you're doing shorter bits and then doing some sort of what feels like slightly random quick runs in between,
Yeah.
quick intervals in between. I think sometimes they can have a lot more structure where it will be like 2 minutes hard, 2 minutes slow. Other times they could be completely unstructured. Like when I was first told about the concept of fartlecking, which I believe was by you, I
Mm.
think you were like, quick to that lamppost, walk to the tree.
That's the classic. That's the
Yeah.
lamppost is always the classic. The idea is it's kind of tricking your body a little bit. You it without instead of having regular intervals, it's completely irregular and totally spontaneous.
Yeah.
So it's running really, really fast to the corner of the road and then
Mm.
walking until you get to that lamppost and then running really, really fast until you can see like the fourth blue car. So it's longer and shorter bits of fast running interspersed with some recovery periods.
Yeah.
So you don't have the very regular recovery that you would get with a structured interval session. And apparently it's supposed to be amazing for you. I don't know. I love a bit of structure myself. So
Yeah, so do I. And I guess you can have slightly more structured fartleks in the sense that it could be like you could do it based on minutes. It's just that they would, I suppose, be slightly more sporadic minutes than they would be like 2
yeah.
minutes on, then you do this. I guess it's a bit more like chuck a 3-minute sprint in there, off you go kind of thing. But yeah. Oh, sorry, very unprofessional. YouTube will see that is Felix here?
Felix is here. It's all right. I can cut that
Okay.
bit. Right. Yes, all good.
Okay, but Dave's here to let her in.
Indeed.
Okay, good, good, good.
Um,
Right, that's fartleks basically.
yeah.
Apparently they're very good for practicing speed training, obviously, while giving yourself time to recover. Um, a great way to introduce some speed sessions into your plan, maybe if you're not quite feeling excited about the idea of some of those others like interval runs and stuff, which can be a little bit brutal. Fartlecking, great place to start, I think.
I think a great place to start. You don't need a watch. It's that
Yeah.
sort of thing where you just don't need any equipment and you can just test your legs a bit.
Yeah.
Like, if you felt at all like I've felt in the past of like, I've only got one pace and it is so low, it's a really good chance to be a bit more childlike about it, to be a bit more, to think back to playground running and think to
Mm.
yourself, actually, if I was chasing a ball, or if I was trying to kind of run to get a bus, or like, how fast would I run? Because it wouldn't be that slow plod. I bet it would be a different kind of pace. And so it is a way of just picking up. It's also quite a nice thing to do if you're running past people where you want to pretend to be better than you are. I do this quite a lot.
Yeah.
So if I pass people that we work with, for instance, I think, oh, I'll see if I can go at about an 8-minute pace rather than a 10-minute pace and pretend I've been doing it all along.
Yeah.
And then wait till I get around the corner and then drop back down again. So it's the same.
I like it. I
Mhm,
like it.
mhm.
Well, I would say that potentially my favorite, I can't believe I'm saying this,
Mm.
bordering my favorite type of speed-ish
Yeah.
different run to your longs and your easies are progression runs. Have you got any of them in your plan?
Oh, I think I do. Yeah. Go on.
I don't
What
know
are they?
why, but I quite like them. That's where it might be a bit longer, the run
Mhm,
itself, and you'd be looking at starting at an easy pace, so same pace that you're going out and doing some of your easy runs or maybe some of your long runs,
mhm.
um, but then building up to a slightly higher heart rate zone, maybe even getting into zone 4. So that's where you're gonna be doing a bit more of your faster work in. So I quite like those. I don't know what it is, but it makes me feel really powerful because 'cause I'm like, "I'm on tired legs, but look at me go."
Yeah.
Don't know why, but I quite like them. I think they're quite a satisfying, way of, like, seeing your speed improve.
Yes, absolutely. And they're one of those ones that you might see in a plan and be reticent about doing because they look hard. But actually, you find yourself very quickly getting used to the pace as it increases, I think. And
Yeah,
actually, when you're doing it, it's not anywhere near as hard as with so many of these things in running. Nothing is quite as hard as it looks on paper,
yeah,
you
that
know?
is true. And if it is, then there's also absolutely no shame in readjusting your goals. I think that's a very important point that we
Mhm.
need to make as well, is that, like, if you are finding it very difficult to keep up with the kinds of paces that you are trying to do, or if you're training by heart rate, if you're feeling like you're not actually having a lower heart rate when you're doing your easy runs or whatever, then I think adjust your pace. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. It's about how you feel and not about what's on paper.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
Very quickly, I'll take you through the last two, and they are
Mhm.
ones that could be runs in themselves, but are generally built into other sessions, and that is hill reps and
Ugh.
strides.
Ah.
Strides fun, hill reps horrid.
And that's the end of the episode.
And that's the end of the episode. Hill reps, they're as they sound. That might be either a session in itself. I had one the other day that was like an interval session, but the intervals were short sprints uphill.
Mhm.
Blech. Um, is all I can say about that one. And that is just what it says on the tin. I think that is particularly like really working to um work on
Work on
your
your
work on your general running strength and fitness.
Yeah.
I guess that really builds cardio fitness doing that.
It must do, but then also if you're running uphill, we're talking about lots of muscle strength too.
Yeah, that's
You're
true.
doing loads of strength work there as you're climbing up that hill. It is so useful for all of us, particularly road runners, to run on varying terrain and cambers and things like that, because if your feet get used to just the one camber, if you only ever run on a treadmill or if you only ever run on a track that is super,
Mm.
super flat, as soon as you find yourself running on a slightly different terrain that's slightly kind of uppy downy, it can cause all sorts of issues. So
Oh,
it's
I had this and it was horrid. When I
yeah.
first started running on a gravelly path, I didn't understand why my calves were broken bags of flesh.
Mhm. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah. What is a camber?
Oh, Sorry. A camber is when a road is kind of going down, angled downwards. So imagine if you were like, all roads have cambers. So the middle of the road where the white line
Yeah.
is at the top, and then it sort of comes down ever so gently like that to, like a small hill if you were to do a cross
Yeah.
section of a road, and the camber is the kind of rise and fall. So if you're just like on the canal path that we run on, there is no camber. But if we were to run on road, on the side of the road next to the pavement, then you'd find that your feet were kind of slightly angled to one
Yeah.
side.
I tell you what, there's a bloody camber on the pavement where I run in the village across from me.
Which is fine if you run down it and then run up it.
Yes, because I guess you're working both sides, but I
Yeah.
do notice that that bit is horrible,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah. Yeah.
probably because of that.
I was always told, so I always trained my little 5Ks that I was doing for my first ever half marathon. I trained around one particular block, which was part of the half marathon circuit actually. But I always did it, and I always did it the same way round. It was a
Yeah.
5K in the same direction, a circle. And someone after my second one, when I'd had a couple of injuries and stuff, said, actually, a really clever thing would just run it the other way. Just
Yeah.
just alternate. So,
Great idea.
yeah,
Yeah.
things like that.
Okay.
Anyway.
Final note on all of this, strides.
Oh,
Um,
strides. Yeah.
I tend to find strides for me come tacked onto the end of easy runs when I'm nearing a race, and they will be short, sharp bursts of sprints, like right at the end. But we're literally talking like 10 seconds
Yeah.
at your speediest pace you can manage. And then maybe there'll be a recovery, and then you'll do a couple of those.
Yeah.
And I quite like those because they tend to be, again, like at the end, you're already warmed up. You've maybe run for half an hour at easy pace or something. And
Mhm.
then I think of them as like reminding my legs when I'm in a oh, I've forgotten what the word is, taper period,
Yeah.
that I'm like reminding my legs that they can run quickly.
Yeah, I think
Do you
that's
think scientifically that's what it is?
I think scientifically that's exactly what it is.
I think it is.
Yeah, some people use them as part of their warm-ups. If you're a sensible person and you do sort of some movement as a warm-up before you start running, a stride is a really good thing to tack onto that. But yeah, at the end of an easy run, when you've done a short easy run, just to do, and it's not enough to really kind of get you out of breath, because it's not like a minute, like you say. It's just like it's like 20 big long
Yeah.
strides along the road, a big powerful spurt right at the end.
Yeah.
Um,
And then
yeah,
slowing to do a proper jog or walk for recovery and then doing it a couple more times. It's not normally a thing that's like hardcore.
no, but
Mm.
it's definitely what you should be doing when you're running past a colleague. It's do your strides then.
Yeah.
If you're not fartlecking, do a couple of strides and just pretend that's how you normally
That's
run.
how you normally run. Or maybe past somebody that, I don't know, you don't really want to talk to. A
Yeah,
neighbour you're avoiding.
yeah.
Time to go, oh, I think there might be some strides in this plan.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was a lot of information and a long episode, and I hope
Yes.
that hasn't all been way too much for people. I guess the bottom line of all of it is, like you said, we have only just started incorporating some of this stuff. I think for years we felt intimidated by it, and
Mhm.
you may be so well versed in this that you're like, I've skipped to the end anyway. And good for you if you are.
Mhm.
But I think for a lot of us, this stuff can feel like it's like super athlete-y or like expert runner or maybe just men. And so actually allowing myself to take up the space of being like, no, I'm a runner who's allowed to do those things too,
Yeah,
even if my speedy pace looks like somebody else's easy pace. Like, I'm allowed to try and develop what my different kinds of levels of running are and practice and play with them.
yeah,
And I hope you all give it a go, because I do think it's really helped. It's helped me get half marathon and 10K PBs this year, I would say.
yeah. Oh, it really has, hasn't it? I think
Mm.
it's worked so brilliantly in your favour, and it definitely it's not helped me get PBs, but I've not been attempting to do PBs. What it's helped me run is easier half marathons and marathons.
Yeah.
So they look off-putting, but don't be put off. I think it's a really valuable addition to a training plan. It's like it's just essential for an easier run at the end of it, which I think is always going to be my goal.
I really think that is not a goal to be underestimated.
No, absolutely not. Next episode, we are going to be talking about something else that will crop up in a training plan, more than likely, which is nothing to do with running. In fact, it's the cross training and strength training aspect of it. Again, I'm going to say, as a 52-year-old woman, this is a non-negotiable. So we're going to talk about that next week, and let you know the sort of stuff that we do and the things that we've found helpful. And we're going to kind of get our guns out for the lads.
Yeah.
You know?
We're going to talk about what kind of strength you might need to do to support half marathon training, because we all know that we should be doing strength in some form.
Yeah.
Regardless, whether we're runners or not, but particularly as runners, we need to do it to support our running if we want to avoid injury. But yeah, let's get into what we're doing and what we think generally would be a good idea if you want to try and sustain half marathon training over the next few weeks.
Exactly. In the meantime, good luck with all your training this week. And we will see you next week.
Goodbye.